Hola, ¿qué tal amigos? Les saluda su amigo Antonio Cisneros y sean todos ustedes bienvenidos una vez más aquí a su canal de información. En esta ocasión les traigo la segunda parte sobre las civilizaciones del interior de la Tierra. En esta conversación entre el informante del programa espacial secreto Goode y David Wilcock, hablan y presentan los aspectos o cómo son estos grupos que viven dentro, grupos humanos, hay que recalcar eso, porque no hablan de los grupos no humanos, sino de los grupos humanos, nuestros supuestamente primogénitos, es lo que supuestamente esta gente así se cree en ellos, supuestamente, que son nuestros primogénitos, que ellos fueron los verdaderos humanos que vivieron en este planeta. Realmente se cuenta de muchos años, millones de años de existencia de estos seres que han pasado catástrofes y catástrofes, realmente varias, pero no quiero exponerlo yo, sino que el mismo informante del programa espacial secreto no lo cuente, no lo platique. Es un video subtitulado, pero muy interesante, ya que nos habla un poquito para entender nuestra historia, la historia de la humanidad. Importante, ya que desde hace mucho tiempo el ser humano está deseoso de saber de dónde procedemos. Bueno, no me alargo más, le presento esta entrevista. Perdón, una cosa más. Les prometí unos videos de mis investigaciones, están en proceso, pero no quiero dejar pasar mucho tiempo sin subir nada. Yo creo que me va a tardar unos 2 días, no quiero dejar de subir absolutamente nada de 2 a 3 días para que esto no se enfríe. Además son videos, estos ya los tengo preparados, así que para no dejar de seguir informando, voy a esperarme unos 2-3 días para empezar mi video sobre mis investigaciones, ¿ok? Bueno, espero que disfruten este video y hasta la próxima. Un abrazo.
All right, welcome to Cosmic Disclosure. I'm your host, David Wilcock. I'm here with Goode. So where we left off was that you see a group of people come towards you, and apparently one of them is Gonzalez, and he's now wearing the same costume, if you want to call it that everybody else is.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's start there. What happens next? How many people came towards you?
Including Gonzalez, there were 5.
Okay.
And about halfway to where I was standing, the four of the 5 stopped. One of the 5 being Gonzalez continued, walked towards me, greeted me. I stuck my hand out to shake his hand. He put his hands up and told me that he didn't want to have to go through the cleansing ceremony again. Basically, he couldn't touch me. And then, he told me that I was going to have to go through a cleansing ceremony, and we started heading the other direction. There was a woman and 3 men that were all together they had hoods up, and she had white hair, eyes that are just slightly larger than ours, that were blue.
Okay.
And very pale skin, and I could see white hair under the.
So would she?
And she was I'm just a hair under 6'1", and she was my height, and they were wearing flat-footed sandal shoes.
Was she disturbing or unpleasant to look at?
No, she was stunning.
Okay, so she's a very beautiful woman.
She was attractive, different looking, but attractive. What
was different about her?
She had narrow features. I mean, she was just narrow features.
So her face was
larger,
narrower?
Yes, and the larger eyes. She's pale, the white hair. I mean, she obviously looked different. But
so if you saw somebody like this walking around, you'd be like, whoa, what's going on with that lady?
She would get your attention.
Yeah.
Yeah. She's not going to walk among us without being noticed.
Right. So and the other people that you saw, what did they look like?
In her group, they had white hair, blonde hair, some of them had brown hair, and some of them had black hair. They weren't all exactly the same with white hair. Some of them had different, she was real tall and not really frail looking, but very thin. Her hands were real thin. I mean, she was just real thin.
Was the narrower face also consistent among them? Or was that more of just her particular look?
Most of them.
Okay.
But there was some of them that were somewhat, a little bit shorter, closer to our height, and a little bit different body, a little bit more meat to them, that wore the same symbol.
What was the symbol they were wearing?
Saturn symbol that was gold. There were 3 different ones. The people that were obviously hosting it had a stone that was kind of a red rosish look at the 6 o'clock. One group at the 3 o'clock position had a black stone, and the other group had a stone that was jade. And they were, all 3 of these groups were genetically cousins, related, and worked together, were a group, some sort of related group beyond all the other groups.
So did you walk through one of these 4 doors to get out of that room?
At that point, the woman and 2 of the men had already left, leaving one man standing. And
nobody spoke to you other than Gonzalez?
No one spoke.
So it's this weird, quiet kind of vibe.
A lot of that.
Like a meditative, monastic silence or something.
This was a temple complex.
Okay.
So this was a very ceremonial kind of thing going on. We go through the door, and it looks like the tunnel ends at a certain point, but it actually continues going down.
So there's a tunnel after the door.
Right. It's a carved corridor, as if it's molded or laser cut, just like the room was.
All granite polished.
Yeah. There's light, and I'll talk about the source later. There's light coming, there's light everywhere, no shadows. It's just lit. It's perfectly lit. So anyway, I could hear the sound of water and kind of, the smell of wet stone and minerals and that kind of a smell.
Like you're in a cave.
Right. And as we were heading down the hall, there was apparently, there was a door there. And on each side of the door was an 8-pointed star. One was gold and about the size of a hand outstretched like this, and slightly smaller on the right side of the opening of the door was a red 8-pointed star, slightly lower. As we're heading in, I immediately, you can feel there's a slight breeze in
as you go through this door, on the left or the right?
The left.
Okay.
And the room's lit up just like all the other rooms. It looks the same.
So the same size ceiling, the very tall ceiling?
It's not as tall.
Okay.
But it's domed, and out of as it comes close to the area of where it goes flat up to the dome, there was a port that water was flowing out of, like a waterfall. A hole, probably a good 3-4 feet wide. And there was water pouring out of it. The water was almost pure milk white. There were also stalactites about like this big that were building underneath the little port.
Okay.
And they were off-white. And they were falling the water was falling onto the back of a statue that was a woman, I guess a goddess of some sort, that was holding something in her arm, I couldn't tell what it was, and had her hand out like this. And she was...
Did she have a hairstyle? Did she have her hair done a certain way?
Her hair was up, kind of stylized up, but she was completely encrusted in like mineral deposits, like calcium, almost like calcium deposits.
Was it like a life-size human effigy?
It was life-size, yes. The water filled a pool up really she was up kind of high. There was a stone that came around in a circle, and then a kind of a cut in the stone, and then the water was flowing out, and then down into a larger pool. And then the larger pool was about this high off the ground and was large and wide.
So this dais that she's on must be raised up pretty high then?
Yes. At that point, the guy turned around, the Inner Earth guy that was with Gonzalez and I, but was staying several paces back, turned and walked outside the room and stood outside the room. And Gonzalez told me to take off my clothes and put them over on a pillar next to his. And that's when he really told me much more about, you know, their Venus worship. They're real big about their cleansing ceremonies.
What is the cleansing ceremony?
Before you enter into certain temples, you have to wear proper clothing, and you have to cleanse your body in certain pools.
So is it similar to the rite of baptism or something?
It's cleansing yourself before you go into a holy place.
Okay. Similar to people saying that you got to take your shoes off.
Yeah, except
you got to take everything off.
You got to take everything off. And I was already cold, and it was already chill, little breezy in that room. I was cold already. Not long after I had taken my clothes off, and he's kind of snickering a little bit, the woman who had somewhat greeted us when we arrived comes walking in with folded up one of the robes, a couple of towels, and those sandals on it. She comes walking in the room.
Well, you're standing there.
Yes.
Just like the day you were born.
Mm-hmm. And Gonzalez sticks one foot behind and slides and steps back, so she has a clear path to me. I just went, and I was not pleased. But she walked right up to me. She handed me the pile of linens, and went like this and turned and, you know, nodded at Gonzalez and turned around and left the room. But yeah, Gonzalez guided me through the cleaning in the pool, and using one rag for one part of your body, one towel for the other.
Okay, so you're now in the robe. Did other people show up at the room once you'd gotten the robe on?
Yes, we exit the room. We are then brought down the hall, which starts to slope down the hall, and it starts to curve to the right, and going down and down as it curves to the right. Then it starts to open up. The ceiling starts to open up, and it comes to a room that is probably getting around 90 feet tall, like that other room.
Okay.
But it's a giant, like a rectangle, kind of. It was very big, and then there was a large door, and we all stopped and were obviously waiting. And we were obviously getting ready to go down to the big meeting. We were standing around in that room just briefly, and that's when I was looking around thinking to myself about the light. And the woman that greeted us and that's walked in and carried the items to me turned to me and with a very strange accent in English said, "The light is created by frequency." And I was kind of shocked that she spoke to me, and before I got a chance to say anything, another woman came walking in wearing the same symbol that she wears, the Saturn symbol, and looked at each of us, and for some reason I just knew, and all of us, everybody at once, we all put our hoods on and walked down a half like semicircle kind of stairs that were cut into the rock or some, just like everything else, were out of the granite. And then we were down on the next floor, and then there was another room. And inside that room were all of these different groups who we were there to meet. And that was the meeting hall.
Is this also a very large room with a high ceiling and the domed roof?
It was kind of a medium-sized room. There weren't a whole lot of people in. There was approximately 3 people for every group, plus Gonzalez and I. So,
okay.
There were 7 groups.
Was there something to sit on in this room?
Yes.
What did it look like? What did you sit on?
They were just not really pews, because there was no back to it, but stone benches.
Okay. That makes sense.
Where several people would sit. And this was a, not a semicircle, but a kind of like an oval, not a full oval room, because it flattened where you walked in. The door where you walked in, it was a flat wall, and then there was kind of an oval. The room was kind of an oval, and the ceiling was domed. And there were people standing and people sitting on the pew kind of benches, and up at the front was a group of people sitting around a stone table. And we were walked up towards the front, and when I got up to the front, I could see the stone on the stone table. It had some carvings on it that I couldn't make out what they were, but I saw the gold star and the red star, 8-pointed stars on the table. Gonzalez and I sat down, and that's when I started seeing all the different groups sitting around the table and in the room with all the different symbols. There was a silver star. There was a stylized swastika. There was a horseshoe or omega symbol with a 8-pointed gold star in it. There were 3 different types of the Saturn symbol that I've described in detail.
With the jewels.
And then there was the one that looks like kind of like an hourglass almost, or could be a symbol of Orion, I'm not really sure.
But it's like triangles.
Right, it's like 2 triangles meeting together.
And each of these amulets represent one of the 7 major
groups,
differentiations of groups down there?
That was the symbol of each group that was present. And when we walked in, each of the different groups had their amulets, and they were tapping and doing like this on their amulets, and there were these little holograms coming off. So these were a technology and not just a piece of jewelry or symbols.
And that goes back to what this insider once told me: the more technology you have, the less technology you need. Right? The amulet could potentially do everything they need.
Right. And there were different looking groups. And I briefly described the people with the Saturn.
Now, a swastika, were these folks Nazis? Were they?
They had nothing to do with anything Nazi. And there were different looking groups. There was an African-looking group that had bronze skin, that were stocky, not real tall, but about the same height, about the 6-foot height. There was a sort of an Asian-looking group, but their body type wouldn't match quite what you would picture on the surface. And people that looked like from India with a very pale blue skin color, almost like you see a vein under your skin, pale blue. And there was a shorter Mediterranean-looking group, and then there was a group, the group that wore the Omega symbol, that looked very much like they could walk among us on the surface.
So you basically just described some variation of all the major races that are on Earth.
Right.
Okay.
And they were they were all coming together to meet, to discuss all of the events that were going on that had pretty much caused them to form this council. There had been a lot of battles and attacks and a lot of things going on underground that were very troubling to them and had caused casualties among their people. So they're very much purists of their culture and genetics. The Omega group mentioned that they were worshippers of Venus, and they mentioned a couple times the Prince of Venus, the morning star.
The 8-pointed star apparently is a symbol of Venus.
Okay, and there might be other meanings for it as well.
Yeah.
There was a gold one and a red one. I have not had all these symbols deciphered for me. I don't know what they mean. So
Gonzalez ends up speaking at some point. You said that was a pretty big part of it.
Right. They had their conversation. They were asked to speak in English for their guests. That really didn't happen much. They started speaking this, what Gonzalez whispered to me was a pre-Akkadian, pre-ancient Sumerian language that they were speaking, and then there was another language that they were kind of all speaking around each other, speaking some English as they would realize, and we were able to. It was pretty confusing, but we were able to pick up the gist of what was going on. They were talking about the surface population becoming more of a threat to them with their advanced weapons, the skirmishes that they'd been having with other subterranean groups, non-human groups. They were also discussing the return of what they called the Guardians, and we'll get into that more later. And a couple other things, bits and pieces we were picking up. And when they were done, the guy from the group with the Omega symbol and the star, motioned to Gonzalez and asked him to deliver his message. And we could feel all the other groups there didn't really seem to like them or feel comfortable with them. It was the only group that was all men. All the other groups were either 2 or 1 woman in the group.
You said in the write-up that him throwing it to Gonzalez was a breach in the normal protocol.
Right. So Gonzalez stood up and looked over.
What was the normal protocol?
The host of the area we were at was supposed to invite.
So he would ask the host to ask Gonzalez, but not go directly?
Right. He basically just...
So he's just being arrogant.
Right. So Gonzalez looked to the proper person. They nodded, and he got up, and he delivered his typical short but to-the-point message that he appreciated some of them visiting one of our bases out in the Kuiper Belt at great personal risk to themselves in previous weeks.
This is an Alliance space program base?
Right. And that we had to start working together more and really had to stop any type of deception, to be open and honest with each other, and that in the future they wanted them to quit deceiving people on the surface, telling them that they were ETs and other types of beings.
Or gods.
Or gods, which they had done mainly in the past before we were sophisticated. And it was real short, and Gonzalez, finished and sat down. And they immediately, the energy went up in the room. They were not real comfortable with what he had said. And they started speaking amongst themselves, past themselves, motioning at us like this as they were talking.
So what was their counterattack? What did they say in response?
They stood up and basically told us that they had been on the Earth for nearly 20 million years. That they were the original humans that developed on the planet. And that over oceans of time there had been major and minor cataclysms that had changed the Earth's tilt, its place in the solar system, its orbit. The Earth has been through quite a lot. And through it all, they have lasted. And they formed basically in the beginning and prior, it happened through many cycles. They had moved underground, their elites and priestess castes left the less sophisticated part of their civilization on the surface to fend for itself, and then come back after some time and appear to those people as gods or elders, and help kickstart civilization again, give them agriculture, medicine, help them with language arts and all that kind of thing to get them kick-started again. And this is something that has happened in cycles over eons and eons of time.
In the aftermath of these conflagrations and cataclysms.
Yeah. And this has happened in cycles and cycles before our accepted time, our history, our accepted history.
Right.
And they decided to allow the people to believe they were gods for what they said was operational security, so the people wouldn't be a threat to them. And this continued on for eons. And that they stated that there were other planets in our solar system that were inhabited by similar types of life forms. Human-like life forms. But they were also going through cataclysms, but they were much more aggressive and warlike, and they were destroying their worlds and their societies, and eventually they caused some major problems, and other races that came into our solar system started to move them to the Earth as refugees. And once they were moved to the Earth as refugees, they started their aggressiveness here and started to take over the surface of the planet and mix their genetics with each other and the surface humans, original humans, to create a mixed breed human group that is what they consider us on the surface.
I can see why you think this is going to be controversial.
Yeah. So, and they scolded us and said, you know, they knew that the secret space program had been involved in some atrocities, and they were withholding judgment on us, and they expect us to do the same because we have very little understanding of our own existence, let alone theirs.
So it's almost like an Aryan ideology kind of thing, like they're the pure bloodline and we're the dirty mixed bloodline that has all this aggressive genetics in it that they don't want to get dirtied by.
Right. And
so it's certainly not going to go well with Gonzalez, I'm sure.
It didn't go well with me either.
Yeah.
When all of this was being said, I was sitting down next to Gonzalez, and when they were just about done, he leaned over and he said, "That went well, didn't it?" And I was still had all of this going through my head. So I didn't even really hear as it was all coming to a close, the meeting was coming to a close. Everyone started standing up and put their hoods on, so I did the same. And we're standing there and everyone's forming a line and shuffling to go back out the way we came. So everyone's quiet. We shuffle our way all the way back up, back through the corridor that goes to the cleansing room. And I'm wondering if we're about to go through a more large public cleansing. But everyone's going past, I see everyone's going past the cleansing room, and I'm seeing flashes down off in the big room that I appeared in originally.
Like they're portaling out or something.
Right. And I'm still walking, and I feel a tap in my left arm, and I took a couple more steps, and I look back, and Gonzalez is standing back like this with two of the females from the host clan that was there. And I quickly stepped next to him, and I found out that they had a personal request from me. The woman that had greeted us, that I had mentioned before with the white hair, had found out about a experience I had in the MyLab program when I was a youth, and that had something to do with this favor. And I said I would hear her out, and she said, walk with me, and she started walking. Gonzalez and the other lady walked about 5 or so paces behind us. I expected her to start talking. She was totally quiet. We walked completely through the giant room where the portaling happened, walked across into the next tunnel, corridor. There were doorways all up and down that had a light barrier across them, a white light barrier, like a doorway. And
you couldn't see through it?
No. And we went a ways, and she touched her amulet, and the light went down, and I could see in the room, and it looked like a real simple lounge, or I don't think it was like a bed. It seemed like a lounge kind of room. She walked in and said, come with me, and I looked at Gonzalez, and he was like, he kind of had a look on his face, and I walked in. She closed the barrier, and I was feeling very anxious. I'm kind of an introvert anyway, so being in the room with a lady I don't know, and I just didn't know what to expect. And then she interfaced with me mentally and told me to relax.
Now, the other people were speaking with their mouths most of the time?
Right. There was interfacing going on one-to-one, but when they're communicating like more than one-on-one, they were speaking. To bring a long story short, she told me that she knew of a place that I had been brought in my adolescence, the crystal cave.
Right.
And it was a cave that we were brought into, beautiful crystals that we were told to try to connect to mentally, not to touch because we could damage them or they could damage us, that the crystals were living beings. And
you said they glowed?
Well, once you started trying, not until you tried to interface with them. And I was able to successfully interface. Other kids were in the chamber, the cave, and then they had an aura around them, and pink, purple aura. They had different auras, and I sent her a quick mental picture of it, and she just beamed with happiness, and tear welled up in her.
Why would you be able to access something that she and her people couldn't have accessed on their own?
She explained to me that there was a group that had hundreds of years ago taken over that area, and it was basically the word in their language, I can't remember it right now, it means feathered serpent, but she sent me mental pictures. It was an image of this raptor group.
Right.
And I got a better image. I got to see how they move instead of just what I'd seen on the glass pad.
Very creepy reptilian bird-like species you described that'll eat human beings.
Right. And
very nasty.
They had control of the area, and without getting too detailed, they require a flesh sacrifice from their allies on the surface for access to certain areas below.
Which I'm sure the Cabal had no trouble providing them with.
Right. So she said, would you be willing to share that full experience with me? I didn't know what that meant. I asked her. She told me about the process, that we would hold hands. I would open my mind to her. And I let her know that I was not comfortable with that for a number of reasons, security reasons, personal sovereignty reasons. She started giving me the hard sell. It was important. she was saying that basically we don't really have that much more to offer them, that this was really important to her people. I was kind of pacing around, thinking about how
What did they think was going to be in the crystal? What was so important to them about the crystal?
Don't know at that point.
Okay.
I asked her if I could speak to Gonzalez. I'm abbreviating this, it's all in the report.
Yeah.
She quickly went to the door, released the field, left. He came in. He was like, "What's going on in here?" I told him what was going on. He said that he understood my concerns, that unless there was a sphere being alliance or information that happened between TIERRA and I that I didn't want her to know about, that there was nothing to worry about, because the SSP Council, Alliance Council, hadn't shared anything with me. That they basically hadn't trusted me with a lot of different information that was actionable data to worry about. So, and that, you know, that he said that I didn't work for him. He couldn't order me to do it, but it might be a bi-directional exchange of information.
So since you were already on the skids with them before and you'd had this aggressiveness and yelling, you were worried that if you just arbitrarily took her offer, that potentially intel could be extracted out of you that could get you in even more trouble or get you booted out of the alliance or something like that.
Or they wouldn't give me data in the future. They would cut me off from intel, which
Right.
it sounds like they already had done quite a bit.
Right.
Or I was concerned about personal sovereignty type. I didn't know what could happen.
Exactly.
So
he gives you the go-ahead, basically.
yeah. And so I said, all right, go ahead, tell her to come back in. And she came in, and she just went and just looked right at me in the eyes, just like, you know, like, so what's in it? You know, it was just like anticipatory.
Like she's on the edge of her seat.
Yeah, and I told her I would do it, and she was just started buzzing around. And she went over to a wall. There was nothing there but a wall. She looks over to a wall, and then she turns around, and she has a goblet, a crystal goblet in her hand. There wasn't a door or anything there, but she has a crystal goblet in her hand with this amber liquid.
Uh-oh.
In it. Yeah. And she walks over to me and offers it to me, and I look at it. I ask her what it is, and she said it's the elixir of Essus, and she explains that it's basically a wine that's made out of a rare flower that grows beneath the ground. And I told her I wasn't...
So you could be tripping brains if you drink this thing.
I didn't know. I told her I wasn't comfortable taking it, drinking it. Is it a necessary step? And she said no, it's customary, basically.
Yeah,
So
I wouldn't drink it.
She took it, and she took several drinks of it, and immediately she changed, like, I don't know if it was inebriation, but she immediately was just different, changed, like,
wow.
Relaxed. And she set the drink down. She had me sit down in a chair that looked like if you have an egg and it was cut this way. Yeah, she had me sit down, and it was barely off the floor, hovering. It was not.
It hovered.
Yeah, it was not on the floor. And she, like, with two fingers guided one of the chairs right in front of me. And then she sat down, I mean, just right across from me. And
Closer than we are now?
oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Just got real close and asked for my hands. I gave her my hands. She turned my hands up like this and put her hands like this.
So this kind of deal.
Yeah,
Okay.
like this.
On top of her knees?
On top of both of our knees, like this. And we were leaning like this. And her hands were bony, and her skin was very warm. It was body temperature is different. And she looked at me in the eyes, and she said, you know, I needed to relax, and I needed to open my mind up. And I started to use some of my techniques to lower my consciousness a little bit, get relaxed, and there's no way to describe what happened next. It felt like my light body or astral body was being pulled in her towards hers, and they were just kind of coming together. And I started having, she was obviously very more advanced than I was mentally. She was honing in on time periods of my life, and when I was getting all these random flashes of what I perceived to be 130 years of time of her life. And I got flashes of her as a child, as her in priestess training, as her meeting with different people from the surface, meeting with secret society groups, meeting with different military and groups from different political systems from Europe and the United States.
Presenting herself as an extraterrestrial?
Presenting herself as an extraterrestrial with other people with her from her group.
Wow.
And this was through I could see the clothes they were wearing. It was through all these different time periods that she had been meeting with them.
So this is sort of like the life flashes before your eyes thing?
Yeah,
except it was like her life?
It was real random. I couldn't hold on to them, but when she locked on to the memory of mine in the cave, I got a memory of her at the same age. It was a memory of her losing someone in some sort of skirmish or attack to some insectoid type attack. But I was pulled back into the experience in the cave, Crystal Cave, and it was very vivid. We relived it. Then after it was over, we both sat back and I was just shaking, quivering, and my brain was releasing all these pleasurable endorphins, nothing in any type of sexual or weird way at all. But it was just, it was very overwhelming. And since then I've been very different. I've been just up in my head a lot, thinking about a lot of stuff, and it's affected me to where I've been a lot more intuitive about things. It's been very weird. And we composed ourselves. And
she had a similar reaction to you?
Oh yeah, she was doing the same thing. We had tears that were just coming down out of our eyes.
Both of you?
Yeah, it was
really?
Extremely emotional. It's unlike any type of connection I've ever had with another person.
Is this something that any of her people could do, or was it something she'd specifically trained for as the priestess?
I think that's something all of their people can do. Because when we were done, she said that there's going to be some people that are not going to approve of her doing this with a mixed surface person, but there's going to be a lot of other people that are going to be extremely happy with the information she was able to pull from the crystals that I interfaced with, that I have no I don't know what information that was pulled.
Well, you told me they blank slated you, they wiped your memory after you got the crystal data, right?
Right, but
she somehow could get it.
Right, but memories exist on your physical hard drive, but also on your light body, right, in that virtual hard drive as well.
So this is sort of like the Vulcan mind meld.
And that's what I referred to it when I talked to her. I said, I will go through with your Vulcan mind meld, kind of as a joke. Wow. But it wasn't funny to her. And then after this, we kind of got our composure together, and we went back out to the hallway where Gonzalez and his hostess was waiting, and she was, very pleased. And at that point, she said she was basically offering, if we had the time, she'd like to give us a tour. And Gonzalez had been wanting a tour of the other places he'd been on, so he just snapped and accepted the offer. And I'm sure that we can go into the very interesting tour I had.
All right. So we got a lot more coming up in the next episode as we continue this fascinating story here on Cosmic Disclosure. I'm your host, David Wilcock, and we thank you for watching.
para que esto no se enfríe. Además son videos, estos ya los tengo preparados, así que para no dejar de seguir informando, voy a esperarme unos 2-3 días para empezar mi video sobre mis investigaciones, ¿ok? Bueno, espero que disfruten este video y hasta la próxima. Un abrazo.
All right, welcome to Cosmic Disclosure. I'm your host, David Wilcock. I'm here with Goode. So where we left off was that you see a group of people come towards you, and apparently one of them is Gonzalez, and he's now wearing the same costume, if you want to call it that everybody else is.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's start there. What happens next? How many people came towards you?
Including Gonzalez, there were 5.
Okay.
And about halfway to where I was standing, the four of the 5 stopped. One of the 5 being Gonzalez continued walking.
Hola, ¿qué tal amigos? Les saluda su amigo Antonio Cisneros y sean todos ustedes bienvenidos una vez más aquí a su canal de información. En esta ocasión les traigo la segunda parte sobre las civilizaciones del interior de la Tierra. En esta conversación entre el informante del programa espacial secreto Goode y David Wilcock, hablan y presentan los aspectos o cómo son estos grupos que viven dentro, grupos humanos, hay que recalcar eso, porque no hablan de los grupos no humanos, sino de los grupos humanos, nuestros supuestamente primogénitos, es lo que supuestamente esta gente así se cree en ellos, supuestamente, que son nuestros primogénitos, que ellos fueron los verdaderos humanos que vivieron en este planeta. Realmente se cuenta de muchos años, millones de años de existencia de estos seres que han pasado catástrofes y catástrofes, realmente varias, pero no quiero exponerlo yo, sino que el mismo informante del programa espacial secreto no lo cuente, no lo platique. Es un video subtitulado, pero muy interesante, ya que nos habla un poquito para entender nuestra historia, la historia de la humanidad. Importante, ya que desde hace mucho tiempo el ser humano está deseoso de saber de dónde procedemos. Bueno, no me alargo más, le presento esta entrevista. Perdón, una cosa más. Les prometí unos videos de mis investigaciones, están en proceso, pero no quiero dejar pasar mucho tiempo sin subir nada. Yo creo que me va a tardar unos 2 días, no quiero dejar de subir absolutamente nada de 2 a 3 días.
Towards me, greeted me. I stuck my hand out to shake his hand. He put his hands up and told me that he didn't want to have to go through the cleansing ceremony again. Basically, he couldn't touch me. So, and then, you know, he told me that I was going to have to go through a cleansing ceremony, and we started heading the other direction. There was a woman and 3 men that were all together with they had hoods up, and she had white hair, eyes that are just slightly larger than ours, that were blue.
Okay.
And very pale skin, and I could see white hair under the.
So would she?
And she was I'm just a hair under 6'1", and she was my height, and they were wearing flat-footed sandal shoes.
Was she disturbing or unpleasant to look at?
No, she was stunning.
Okay, so she's a very beautiful woman.
She was attractive, different looking, but attractive.
What was different about her?
She had narrow features. I mean, she was just narrow features.
So her face was
larger,
narrower?
Yes, and the larger eyes. She's pale, the white hair. I mean, she obviously looked different. But
so if you saw somebody like this walking around, you'd be like, whoa, what's going on with that lady?
She would get your attention.
Yeah.
Yeah. She's not going to walk among us without being noticed.
Right.
So
and the other people that you saw, what did they look like?
In her group, they had white hair, blonde hair, some of them had brown hair, and some of them had black hair. They weren't all exactly the same with white hair. Some of them had different, she was real tall and not really frail looking, but very thin. Her hands were real thin. I mean, she was just real thin. Was
the narrower face also consistent among them? Or was that more of just her particular look?
Most of them.
Okay.
But there was some of them that were somewhat, a little bit shorter, closer to our height, and a little bit different body, a little bit more meat to them.